Welcome to the Sound on Sound People and Music Industry podcast channel. In this episode, SOS author Paul Tingen talks to Hugues Vinet, Director of Innovations and Means of Research at the IRCAM Institute in Paris.
The legendary French IRCAM Institute was founded in 1970 by composer Pierre Boulez at the request of then-President Georges Pompidou. The institute continues to be 100% funded by the French government. IRCAM stands for Institut de Recherche et Coordination Acoustique Musique, which translates as Institute for Research and Coordination in Acoustics/Music. IRCAM is famous for developing a wealth of groundbreaking music technologies and for playing a crucial role in the creation of avant-garde electroacoustic classical music. Much of the software developed at IRCAM has also found its way into the mainstream. And some mainstream musicians have found their way to IRCAM. For example, Frank Zappa in 1984. Sound on Sound first visited IRCAM in 1996, which resulted in an article that was published in the December issue of that year. Almost exactly 25 years later, we revisit IRCAM to see what is going on there today. We talk with Hugues Vinet, IRCAM's Director of Innovations and Means of Research. Remarkably, Vinet also featured in our 1996 article. Hello, Hugues. Welcome to this Sound on Sound podcast. First of all, you've been working for IRCAM for a long time. How long exactly has it been?
Well, yes, I arrived in October 94. And so I've stayed actually at this position till then.
That's a long time. So you must really enjoy your job.
Yes, exactly. I didn't find better elsewhere.
So do you have a musical background yourself?
Yes. So I'm a pianist. I did the classical studies, and then I played jazz with people. So we did concerts, we did records, etc. But now I'm too busy to continue, but I hope I will be able to, to do it again later.
But your job at IRCAM has a more technical focus. So what is your technical background?
Yes, I'm an engineer in digital signal processing. So this is my training.
Okay. So let's get to IRCAM. So in 1996, I wrote an article about IRCAM, and I came to Paris, and you were one of the people I interviewed.
Yes.
I've been looking at the website of IRCAM, and it's incredibly rich. There's many aspects, and you could spend 2 hours just on the website. But if you would have to encapsulate today, how is IRCAM different from 25 years ago? What are the core shifts in focus of IRCAM?
Well, of course, there are many technologies that did not exist at this time, I would say. For instance, the generalized use of AI, technologies like web audio. But there is also a continuity, So digital signal processing is still a main focus. 3D audio spatialization too. Maybe there has been also the rise of sound design. And I could explain in more detail what I mean by that, which is not exactly the usual meaning of sound design. That is a functional role of sound in everyday life. Also, when I arrived, there was almost nothing related to new instruments and gestural control of music. And so we developed also an axis of research. So yes, and many other features, for instance, computer-aided orchestration, etc. So there are many things that we can speak about. And even in the themes that we were already working on, like 3D audio, there has been, of course, many development since then.
So would you say, because, actually IRCAM was an initiative by Georges Pompidou, who asked Pierre Boulez to start an institute that was dedicated to musical, acoustic, and computer research, and it was going to be very prestigious because it was right in the center of Paris, right next to the Centre of the Pompidou. So, would you say that the main focus or the main purpose of IRCAM is still the same? It's just a matter that you've adapted to how technology and the world in general has evolved.
Yes, and it's even more true today because Boulez, at the end of the 70s, had a vision of the needs of contemporary music production for advanced technology, and it has become true, and so really this project is completely true, and this is the main dynamics of activity at IRCAM. That is the specific. Of course, we are a big lab. We are more than I think 120 people working on various research and technological aspects. But really, the main aspect is that this research is first applied to a contemporary music production, and so we host many different artists at IRCAM, and they use the technology, and so we have to develop it in a generic way, so that it fits to very diverse aesthetic needs. And so, yes, I can say that Boulet's project is still really the heart of IRCAM's dynamics today.
But are the people who are employed, I mean, does the French government still pay for IRCAM?
Yes.
Although you also have commercial partnerships, don't you? Like I noticed you had with Renault and other big companies where maybe the sound design or there are certain connections you have with the business world as well.
Yes, and I should develop that aspect because we are very active in that. So there was a first circle of dissemination, diffusion of our technology, which is the IRCAM Forum, which was founded about a little before I arrived in '94. And the goal here of the forum is to disseminate, to distribute all the software that is produced internally for our production to external users. And it has grown a lot. I think now we are about 20,000 users worldwide, so it's quite a big, international community. But this is not commercial. You just register on a yearly basis and you get access to the software.
Because I noticed on your website you have a lot of free software to download.
Also, but the main channel of diffusion is the forum. Because there are also a lot of documentation. There is a community. You can join a community and people. So there are many discussion groups, if you like, on the various software. And then, of course, we have been very active in collaboration with companies. First, it was focused on companies who develop tools for sound production and music production. And so we have had many licenses, for instance, of Super VP that you may know, which is an engine that does high quality time stretching, transposition, etc. And then we developed also other fields of expertise in relation to the industry. For instance, at the beginning of music information retrieval, it was at the end of the 90s. We developed also some specific research. We coordinated the first large projects, European projects on that topic. And since then, we have developed a lot of the technology that we have licensed to major actors like Universal Music Group, etc. And now, 2 years ago, it was in 2019, we founded a new subsidiary of IRCAM, which is called now IRCAM Amplify. And so now this is really an independent company. So IRCAM is a majority shareholder. And the goal is to bring a new step with investors on the application of IRCAM's research to the world, to the industry, etc. The generalized power of sound. So application in many aspects of our life, not only professional, but also daily life.
If you look at the musical side of things, I mean, are you still very much geared towards classical music, or are you, because of sound design, obviously, we have all the plug-in companies and the DAW companies, from Avid and America and Germany in particular, many companies that develop plugins and sound shaping. So there's a whole, when we spoke last time, all these boundaries were getting blurred. I mean, does it mean that you're also reaching out more to those kind of companies and that kind of technology, or are you more geared towards the classical world still?
No, and even a lot of our technology is also used in sound production, not only in music. For instance, there is a collection with our partner Flux in France called IRCAM Tools. So there is a series of plugins, and for instance, there is a plugin called Tracks, which implements advanced sound audio, transformation of voice. So you can change a voice in real time from male to female, etc., to elderly person. You can change the pitch contour, etc. And this is used. It can be used in music, but also in theater, and a lot, of course, in video and movie production. And also, in this collection, there is also the SPAT, our 3D spatialization engine, and it is used also in all sectors of sound production. So I would say that yes, the basis of our musical production at IRCAM is focused on contemporary music production. This is true, but then our tools, the goal is that our tools can be applied to much broader musical aesthetics related to contemporary music.
Because also I noticed that this software language Max that went to Opcode, and now it's owned by Ableton?
No, it's owned. Yes, it was owned by Cycling 74 after Opcode. And Cycling 74 was then bought by Ableton. Yes, you're right.
So does that mean that you work in conjunction with Ableton?
Yes.
So what happens on that front? Is that developing Max, or what is Ableton doing? Is Ableton using your technology and applying it, or your research? I mean, how does that work?
Actually, they did something very clever with David Ziccarelli, who was the CEO of Cycling 74. They were very complementary because Max enabled to build some musical application using high-level programming. And now this can run within Live. And so IRCAM's main tool for music production is still Max, because Max enabled to combine various music and sound processing modules. And these modules are the basis of what our research produces. So the research produces advanced algorithms, and then these algorithms are packaged for our production as Max objects. And then these Max objects can be combined for a given application in a plugin that will run on Live. And so the workflow is quite straightforward. And it's only high-level programming. You don't need to be an engineer to do that. And so, yes, we also have a collection called IRCAMax that is sold by Ableton, and that implements some specific sound processing modules. And for that, we develop them with Max.
Interesting. So anybody also in the world of electronic music can easily work with those tools?
Yes.
So how has the world of contemporary music developed? Because, of course, the trajectory, harmony became more and more abstract, and we got 12-tone, and then we got 8-tonal music, and then was under particularly Pierre Boulez in many ways was like an exponent of going beyond tradition in music, and we got unusual sounds and strange things. Then, of course, electronic music. I mean, we had musique concrète, and then the whole electronic music thing after the Second World War. All that is kind of known, but what have been the developments in classical music, would you say, over the last 25 years, stylistically? Has there been attempts made to integrate the electronic experiments more with melody and harmony? Have there been other developments? Because actually I don't think the public at large is very aware of what's been happening in contemporary music.
So yes, I think one important aspect has been what we call computer-aided composition. So this is a line of research and application, and the main software that we develop for that is Open Music, but there are also other implementations in other environments. And the idea here is to model the various elements of language of music, notes, chords, rhythms, in a structured way, so that this can be manipulated by the computer and then can be generated algorithmically. and many composers have worked on that. And this goes much beyond what you say, that is scales with quarter tone, eighth tone. You can basically design any scale you want, and you can also elaborate rhythms with no limit in complexity. And of course, a main concern has been the link with the sound world. In the second half of the 20th century, there has been a movement called spectral movement with several composers who developed links between this symbolic world and the sound world, and for instance, who analyzed real life sounds into combination of notes, and they would then orchestrate these sounds with all the complexity of the sound, for instance, and vice versa. Computer-aided composition also consists in controlling synthesis from discrete symbols, controlling synthesizers, if you like. So you consider it as a very broad extension of MIDI, if you like. And so then you can produce, and the goal, I think, that is not attained at all, that is there is still no generalized language of sound. And so this is really a main concern today in modern music. There are practices that enable to produce a musical idea in sound, I would say. There are many practices that consist mainly in combining a series of processes, of actions to the sound in order to reach a given goal. But there is no generalized language that you can apply in order to generate your sound idea. It's still a question of practice, of tools, but it's a goal that we try to reach little by little.
So you're talking about the equivalent because, of course, in music, we have music notation, which is only rhythm and pitch, really. So what you're talking about language, basically to symbolize, like I have a sample, or I've sound designed some kind of sound, and what you're looking for is a way of representing that, so somebody else would be able to recreate that more or less somewhere else without actually having heard the sound.
Yes, this is the idea. And precisely, we have worked in sound design. That is how to describe. Is it possible to have a vocabulary that describes the sound world in a structured way? And so we have also worked on that, and it combines several, I would say, viewpoints on sound. One is, of course, the sound source. When you hear a sound, to which sound source does it remind you? So is it a percussion? Is it a boat, object, etc.? So physical mode of production of sound. And then there are some more abstract levels of representation, for instance, timbre. And then this can be, this results also from joint studies between human perception and also signal processing. And we are in this articulation between the physical world, the single world, and the perceived world. Because we perceive some things, but so there are specificities in our perception, for instance, masking, etc., or the way we hear pitch as a superposition of harmonics, and we listen to a single tone, for instance. And so these aspects of perception must be taken into account in the way we design algorithms for producing a given sound idea.
But you mentioned earlier on sound design, because it sounds like a lot of what you're doing would overlap, with sound design.
Yes.
Also happening in movies and in all sort of fields, even in pop music, and in people are doing all sort of sound design and trying to create things that sound just a little bit different. So can you talk a little bit about that? What your overlap is between what you do and sound design, as it happens more like people who are working indoors and they have Pro Tools or Logic or whatever?
Yes, what I understand from the usual meaning of sound design, maybe sound effects. For instance, you add noise in a soundtrack, which is not voice nor music. It's all the other kinds of sound that are called environmental sounds. In a movie, for instance. But what we mean there is that these categories of sounds can be also used in a process of design of an object or a situation. For instance, in a car, there are alert sounds, and these sounds are the object of a specific study. That is, which kind of sound should we play for a given situation. So this is the functional aspect, and then there is the aesthetic aspect. For a given brand, a given company, and a given brand in this company, which kind of sound would fit or not. And you see, it's a discussion both on the aesthetic aspect and on the functional aspect. And so yes, we worked a lot on that dimension with many companies. I mentioned cars, but there are other applications. For instance, with high fashion, now they produce also objects that generate sound and that have their own identity. And each time you have an object that produces sound, people at the beginning did not ask themselves the question of the aesthetics of sound or its role in terms of information. But now it begins to be more and more admitted by everybody that this requires a specific process of design.
So that also requires technology, but also psychology, like the kind of sounds that, for example, if you have a car, what the sounds you make in a car, what makes people comfortable, what will alert them, what will maybe really shock them a little bit if necessary. So you working then with psychology, with acoustics, all sorts of fields.
Yes, and also we work. So basically, it's a process in 3 phases. There is a process of definition, specification. Then there is a process of production of sounds. And then there is a process of evaluation. And it's a loop. There can be many iterations in such a process. And so the last phase, which is evaluation, is probably the one we mastered the most because we use methodologies of experimental psychology to do tests with users, to test with people what they hear, how do they react with a given sound, etc. I think the one in which we were less advanced is the first phase of specification because there is no universal language for speaking of sound, and so for writing, I would say, a definition of work of a sound designer. And so how to specify what we want to attain, this actually requires a joint process with the client, with the company who wants to have these sounds, and the people who will design it. And so we have developed this kind of ideation methodology that, if you like, matches the given categories of sound, how we can speak of sound, and the given categories of the brand and functionality that we want to attain.
So you want to go beyond, in electronic music, 2 guys will sit in a studio and somebody plays a sound and says, "Oh, that sounds good." And you say, "Yeah, good, but add a bit of low end, or maybe to make it a bit more scratchy." Or so you want to go beyond those kind of discussions and be able to define that essentially.
Yes, actually, we already do it. We have done that for a long time, for several decades. I can give another example, which is quite original. It's people who produce champagne. So we work with the champagne, the Krug champagne. It's a very, I think, great company for champagne, and they consider that the best conditions must be set for wine tasting. And so, a champagne is a mix of many different wines. Every year, the mix changes. But there is a given set, I don't remember how many, I think it's 200 basic wines that intervene in a mix. And we work with them, and each of the basic wines, we did actually a sound design related to it. That is, you hear some sound while you taste the wine. And the dynamics of the sound follows the dynamics of taste. And so for somebody who is less familiar with tasting, it helps a lot in your attention in the tasting experience with the sound, for instance. And something very amazing, actually, we did a listening experiment to people who know very well these wines, and without tasting, they recognize the wine only by hearing the sound. You see, so there can be some synesthetic relations between taste and sound, for instance. The goal is to really create situations with the best possible conditions of tasting. And then the sound is a support of this tasting. Well, I didn't say that also the sound reproduction system is very well designed. There are many loudspeakers, etc., for the sound diffusion, and so that the experience is really the best, as good as possible.
So what about, you talked about the 3 stages, second stage production. What kind of things do you use? I mean, do you use modern synthesizers or soft synths or things, or do you still work with your own sound generation things? What makes the sound?
Yes, actually, any use for sound production can be used. After, it's the choice of the artist to choose the right modules. But we also develop now some specific tools for that. For instance, we just issued a tool that is called ScatArt. It's the result of a European project. And the goal was to sketch sounds for sound design with voice and gesture. Intuitively, if you do, for instance, sound designers can understand what you want. So it could be a kind of specification. And now that we have algorithms that analyze various dimensions of sound, we can map these dimensions to other sounds that we have in the library with similarity metrics. And so we developed that tool that is called ScatArt, in which you can enter a sound from your voice, or you can enter a gesture, etc. So a dynamic signal, and it will map to sounds that you will have selected.
Do you use commercial synthesizers like Moogs or Oberheims or whatever, or soft synths? I mean, Ableton has a whole bunch of soft synths inside.
Yes, so it's up to the artist. There is no limitation on that. Maybe there are limitations when the sound is produced by an embedded hardware, for instance, in a car. It's very much constrained, and then the artist must work with that sound synthesis device.
So I'm just going to go to your website for a moment, because actually it's very, very extensive and comprehensive. And so you have at the top, you have research and creation and transmission and innovations, and it just seems like 5 categories. Can you talk a little bit more, because I'm not entirely sure. So what exactly is the research into artificial intelligence? So you're building artificial intelligence type softwares that can create music or research music, or you are, what exactly are you doing in that direction? Why is it such a hot topic?
Well, to take again the structuration I already described in terms of symbolic representation or signal. First, the generation of this symbolic information can be now given to an AI, and it goes much further than before. And we developed, for instance, now computer improvisers. So you basically play. The computer doesn't know anything about your musical style, whatever. There is only a mic, and the agent will play with you. It will analyze what we do, and it will react in real time to what you do. And so we have worked a lot on that with jazz musicians, for instance.
So the computer improvises?
Yes, it improvises with you. And we have developed that such that either it's completely agnostic, that is, there is no knowledge on what you will play, or it can have also a scenario, what we call a scenario, which is a high-level temporal structure that can be, for instance, a grid in jazz. And then it will constrain its responses to that scenario, for instance, to the grid. But a scenario can be also in terms of succession of different categories of sounds. It's not only related to harmony. It can be what you want in terms of dimensions of description of sound. So this is an example of use of AI. Using symbolic representation of sound, because here we analyze what the performer plays in terms of notes, succession of notes, chords, etc. It would feed an algorithm, and then it will analyze it and react also in a symbolic world, and then take the sounds, for instance, of the performer to then generate that new synthesis.
Thank you, Hugues, for taking the time to talk with us in this Sound on Sound podcast.
Thank you for listening, and be sure to check out the show notes page for this episode, where you'll find further information along with web links and details of all the other episodes. And just before you go, let me point you to the soundonsound.com/podcasts website page, where you can explore what's playing on our other channels.